Good afternoon. Happy Friday, and welcome back to LFG Live. For those of us with kiddos home this week, 2 days to go, parents, 2 days to go. We've had a blast with our kiddos. We've done talent shows. We've gone out and done different adventures. It's been a really fun, I'll say exhausting, but truly a fun week with my kids. We actually I uploaded the talent show to my YouTube channel to share with some friends and family and with all of you folks as well. It was definitely a blast. All right, so let's get started. Today we are talking about SOPs without the corporate BS. First, as always, though, what am I drinking today? I'm always drinking tea. Today, I did switch it up a little bit. I know I said last week I was going to. This week I actually did have an iced coffee, but I can't just be normal. In my house, there's usually two different ways that I have iced coffee. One's the lazy way and one's the thoughtful way. The lazy way is usually I've made a second pot of afternoon coffee. I only drink one cup. Lauren doesn't want any. And rather than dumping it down the drain, I put it in a container and put it in the fridge. So that's saved. That's kind of the lazy way. The other way, which is this one, is a cold brew coffee. So I coarse grind my coffee, put it into a container, leave it in the fridge for 2 or 3 days, strain it out, and have a really nice coffee that loses a little bit of that bitterness that you have in the iced coffee that has already been brewed hot and then cooled off. So enjoying my iced coffee today on this kind of nice day, I suppose, outside with the kiddos on what is the last couple of days of our spring break with them. So as a reminder, everyone, this month is our process and operations month. This is week 2. Last week, we talked about if it lives in your head, it's a risk. We talked about a lot about why that's a risk, why that's dangerous for the business. And honestly, if you're a business owner, CEO, manager, why it's just kind of a pain in the butt for you. You have to be bugged every time somebody needs something. And that just doesn't create efficiency. It stresses you out and doesn't create repeatable things that can be done in your business for success. This week, as we alluded to last week, we're going to be talking more about SOPs. Now, I know when people hear the words SOPs, they cringe. A lot of stuff on the operational side of the business causes that same cringe. I get it. One of the businesses I worked with, we actually eliminated the word SOP. We called it our playbook. And yes, I know we can argue that a playbook and an SOP are kind of two different things. But my point in bringing that up, call it what you want. If you believe that SOPs is really going to be a word that kind of creates that negative environment, change it. Just like years ago on my human resources team, we knew that HR had a kind of negative feel about it, right? It was, those are the bad guys. And we changed it to people experience, as many departments did, or many companies did, to try to just change that connotation and change that thought. Because what we don't want is going into a big project we're going to invest a lot of time in for people to look at it and immediately not want to bother with it just because of that negative connotation. So change it up to what you want. If I'm overthinking it for your particular needs, use SOP. I don't care, as long as it's working for you. So in your business, again, we're going to talk about SOPs, playbooks, whatever that might be. If you have SOPs today, I want you to think about one, or go grab one. If you're at your computer, pull one up. If you have a booklet, wherever it is, pull one up or go grab one. And when you're looking at it, and if you don't want to do that now, that's fine, do it later. But when you're looking at it, ask yourself a couple questions. When was it last updated? I will tell you more than 80% of the time that I review people's SOPs, it was never updated. It is the original document that was created. More than 80%. Could a brand new team member, you hire me today, could you hand me that SOP, walk away, and have me follow that SOP to do that task? Maybe 1 or 2 questions are okay, right? But is it 3 or more questions to get through that SOP as a brand new employee? Not great. And does your team actually use it, even though it's documented? Does anyone use it, or do they just go ask Daria? Go ask Daria. She knows the answer to these questions. If any of those were a no, or if you even hesitated on any of those, you definitely need some work on your SOPs. If you have that SOP in place, but it's not updated, it's not being used, we don't know where to find it, you have a compliance document. You have something that when maybe you're audited or you want to prove that you have it, it's there, but it's not actually a functional document. And there's a huge difference between a compliance document and a functional, living, breathing standard operating procedure. If you don't have those living, breathing standard operating procedures, this session is for you, and I'm here to help you should you need it going forward. So let's keep it rolling. So what makes an SOP work well? What kills the SOP? And as usual, I know I say this every single week, every business is going to be a little bit different. Everything is going to be a little customizable, but I always try to think of the overall. Overall, what kills an SOP and what makes one successful? And what kills an SOP, I just said it, it's written for compliance and not for use. If it's just written for compliance, no one's going to use it. No one's even going to look at it except for during an audit. It's too vague. For example, handle the customer professionally. It's not really giving details. It's too long. If it takes 20 minutes to read, no one's going to use it. So I think about the background that I came from, which is mostly retail, some customer service over the phone, some sales over the phone, some call centers. And there's that additional pressure of not just having to get the job done, but traditionally you're trying to get that job done while you're talking to somebody. Now, if you're back office and you maybe have a few minutes to look something up, that's completely different. But I always try to look at that worst case scenario, which is you have a customer right in front of you and you need to know what's up, right? So if I'm on the phone with a customer, they need to know something. I need to be able to go find my answer without trying to read for 20 minutes. That's not going to work. I'm never going to do it. The information there might as well not even be there, right? So written for compliance, too vague, too long. It's buried. You have to be able to find it. So if we can have the most amazing SOP in the world, if nobody knows where it is, or it's buried so deep somewhere that they can't find it, or they just don't have the login for it, they don't know where it is, it's not going to work. And then the last, always a big one, if it's stale. And we'll talk about that a little bit. But if we have things that, even if people have the perception that it's stale, and I'll talk about that a little bit, even if there's a perception that it's stale, it's not going to work anymore. So what I mean by that, when we talk about it in a little bit, is when we audit things, we're going to put a last audited date on. If I open up an SOP and that last audit, I'm looking at it, and that last audit date, and right now it's 4/10/2026, and I'm like, wow, this hasn't been updated since 4/10/2024. This is a 2-year-old document. Now, in the background, we may be saying, well, nothing's changed in 2 years on that particular process, and you may be right. But I promise you, I'm looking at that 2-year-old last audited date. I think it's outdated, and I'm not going to trust it. So we'll talk about that process a little bit in a moment. But what makes the SOP process actually work? 1, it's detailed enough to follow. 2, plain enough to understand. And I always laugh at this one. One of the companies that I worked with very recently, one of the owners, the COO, was an amazing person, amazing human. I absolutely loved working with him. And he wrote our SOPs. Before he was in that particular business he was in, he's actually a scientist. A scientist was writing these SOPs. So were they detailed? Were they accurate? Were they nearly perfect in the level of detail and everything that they had? The step-by-step, yes. But nobody could understand them. They were almost too smart. So we have to make sure that it's plain enough for end user to understand. Now, I'm not trying to put anyone down and say that, we're not as smart as this particular gentleman. We aren't. But I'm not trying to say anybody's not smart. But it's the point that we shouldn't have to spend that extra time kind of navigating through the big words and the big explanations. It should be very easy to understand. So detailed enough to follow, plain enough to understand, short enough to use it in the moment. Now, I will get some debate back on this because some people will tell me, well, some SOPs can't be short. My feedback I'm going to give to you is three different pieces of feedback. 1, you might be right. Sometimes it just needs to be that long. My second piece of feedback is chances are, in most cases, if it's too long, we could probably break it up into multiple SOPs. Because again, if it's too long, we're not going to be able to find it anyway. And third, if we absolutely, for whatever reason might be, say we cannot, there's absolutely no way at all we can break this up into multiple SOPs, it must be in one. Okay, the one thing I'm going to beg of you is create a cover page for it then. Create a cover page that goes over the most common things people are looking for, the most common questions, most common issues, so that they do have that quick snapshot to look at when they need the answer in that very moment. And what can happen then is if I have the answer in that moment, I might go back later to read that much longer. I might not, but I might, right? Personally, for the type of learning I like to do, I'm going back and reading that later. But I don't want to have to read it to answer the problem that's in front of me necessarily. I want that snapshot view. So there are ways, even if we feel that it absolutely must be a longer SOP, that we can still make it easy for our teams to understand. Okay. When I look at SOPs, we try to create them kind of customized to the particular industry, to the particular business. But there are traditionally going to be 5 components of it. Maybe more, maybe less, I know, but traditionally 5 if I'm just kind of creating a starting SOP. The purpose. Why does this process exist? What goes wrong if it's skipped or done poorly? So the why. What is this for? What does it do? Why does it matter? We skip this a lot. We'll put a title up, and then we'll put the steps in it. But let's start it off with what is this for and what happens if we miss this? If we don't do this step in, let's say we're scheduling a client. Let's say it's back in my irrigation and landscaping days. And we're inbound. It's March, it's April. Our phones are crazy. And if we don't follow these particular steps, this is how we get the client scheduled. And if we don't do this right, we run the risk of either overbooking our technicians or missing the appointment, right? So that right away, when I read that, I'm like, oh boy, I don't want these things. I want it to go right. I don't want these things to happen. So that immediately tells the person what can go wrong if we don't do this and what this is actually for. Second is the trigger. What starts this process? I'm just going to keep going with the example I just said. Clients calling in, clients calling in to book their, spring startup for their irrigation system. Whatever it might be, though. Is it a call? Is it an email? Is it an invoice due? Is it a new hire's first day? There's SOPs for onboarding, which we talked about last month. Whatever can come in, we want to note that trigger. So the purpose, the trigger. The third is the steps. That's the meat and potatoes of it. The how do we get this done? Try to keep it to 5 to 12 bullets when possible. Keep it action oriented. Use the least amount of words as we possibly can, because again, imagine somebody is on the phone with somebody looking at this and they simply want to skim through it. They don't want to have to read through a bunch. Keep it as minimal as possible. 5 to 12 bullets, action oriented, clear steps. Click X, do Y, click Z. That's it. Go through it. Every step should be a person that somebody can do and check off. Fourth, so we have purpose, trigger, steps. Fourth is quality check. What does right look like? And what I love about this step is it's not just making sure in that moment that they're doing it right. This is going back to our people and leadership series back in February. That's the first step of accountability. That's saying, I'm explaining to you exactly how to do it, why we have to do it. Now, what right looks like. It removes any guesswork of if they did it correctly or not, because you're laying out what right looks like. Makes it so much easier to go back and have those coaching conversations with people if that quality check, that number 4, was not done to where the company standards are. You can reference right back to that SOP and say, hey, this is how we were supposed to get it done. What was getting in your way? What obstacles were in your way? What tools do you need? And then we can start those performance management conversations we had back in February. And then the 5th one, this is huge for going back and making sure these things are updated. And that is who owns this. Not a person, or I'm sorry, not a team, not a whole team. It's not the operations team own this, the human resources, the sales team, a person. Now, that person doesn't have to be a person's name. It could be, you may not want it to be Daria, because maybe Daria will move to a different department, or maybe Daria will get a promotion, maybe Daria will leave that company, right? But a role. So, for example, if we had an HR policy for onboarding, it may say, department leader of recruiting or onboarding, or it may say senior HR person. However your organization is structured, it's going to be assigned to that person. Everybody knows who owns that process. We also make sure that it's that individual person who has that scheduled cadence, which we'll talk about in a moment, of when to go back and look at that, when to update it. That person owns it. It's not once it becomes a department, it becomes fuzzy. It becomes, wait, did you do it? I thought you were doing it. Well, I used to do recruiting, but now you do recruiting. Nobody's really going to own it. And not even saying people are going to do that maliciously. It's just the nature of a moving business, right? People may get lost in it. If you have one person who owns it, they'll own it. And then if they get moved, they delegate it. They hand it off to somebody else. Okay. So again, the 5 steps, or the 5 things that should be included in our SOPs: purpose, trigger, your steps to how to get it done, your quality check on what right looks like, and then who is the owner of that policy. Okay. So where do you start now? Gosh, there's so much complexity in business, right? Look at LFG. We have 5 pillars that we help businesses with, right? So much complexity in your business. You can't start with everything. You just can't. You can't try to sit down and make every SOP for everything you're doing. So my suggestion, and once you start with this, you'll start to get the ball rolling on a regular cadence. Start with 3. Pick the process that breaks the most. That's your biggest risk. That's you're the one that causes the most callbacks, the one that causes the most rework, the one that causes the most customer or employee complaints. When you look at lean management principles, when you want to look at what kind of isn't, from a manufacturing standpoint, what isn't working right now, where's our breakage, where are our levels? Pick the process that breaks the most. That's the first SOP you want. Second, and this is a great one for smaller businesses that are trying to grow, pick the process only one person knows. So think of a smaller business, 5 to 20 employees. Is there only one person that knows how to do payroll? A lot of times that's true. Is there only one person that knows how to order work shirts for people? Is there only one person who knows the logins for our gas cards for our fleet of trucks that we have out there? Now, what if that one person, God forbid, something happens and they are not in work that day and they're unavailable, they can't be reached, or something happens and they're out for 1 or 2 weeks? Are we just not going to pay our employees? Of course we're going to, and I'm sure as a business owner, you're going to find a clever way to do it. But rather than finding a clever way, which obviously wastes resources and wastes time, I just want to be able to pick it up where the other person left off. So having that SOP, again, big risk if only one person knows it, have that SOP in place to make sure that should that person not be there tomorrow for whatever reason, somebody else can pick it up and go with it. And then the third, this one always makes me laugh and I love it. Pick the process you hate being asked about. Is there something that every time somebody asks you, you're like, oh my gosh, this is kind of annoying. So the one that people email you about, text you about often, document it once, send the link forever. That's it. If somebody does happen to ask you, they forgot where to find the SOPs, you don't have to re-explain yourself every time. Click the link, send it out. Write each one of these 3 things in that 5-part format that we talked about a moment ago. Set a timer for 30 minutes. Just 30. Give yourself a draft of all 3 of those. We don't have to have everything perfect. What did I say last week? I think it was ugly is better than perfect. or no, ugly is fine. Done is better than perfect. So at least you have something down, right? You can refine it later, but you want to get those original thoughts out. Just get it done. Then you can start fine tuning. You can ask other people to look things over, people who are in the processes, either as much as, or maybe even potentially more than you. Bring in your subject matter experts and go from there. Once you're done with those 3 SOPs, depending on, again, the size of your business and the scope of your hierarchy, you may want to go to your other executive leaders if you have them and have them do the same in their departments. Smaller companies, let's say you have 5-10 employees, that may not be the case. But if you're 20, 25 and more, you probably have another leader in the business that's doing some things that you don't do on a daily. Have them write those SOPs for you. Again, it's only going to help. It's going to be a small investment. It's going to be an investment of time. I'm not going to lie about that. But it's one that is scalable and actually saves time overall because you're reducing the amount of mistakes. You're making everything repeatable. Your performance management becomes easier, all of this. So when you're creating your SOPs now, where do they go? What do you do with them? I don't care. I really don't. Just have them. I'm going to go over a few things that I've used in the past, a few things that I found through some of my research for one of my clients that I haven't used. And I'm going to give you one opinion of something I absolutely will not use. Ready? So 2 that I've used personally were Trainual and Whale. Trainual was specifically for small businesses and onboarding, very searchable, which was great too, right? I didn't have to know the document. I can just go into Trainual and search in the search bar like a Google and say like a Google. Why did I say it like that? Like Google. But you can go in there and just type in, sprinkler head, and it'll pull up all the SOPs that have sprinkler head in it, or appointment, and it'll pull up all the SOPs with appointment. It also would send the owner of the document a reminder on whatever cadence we set up for them to go back in to update or at least audit and update the audit date on each SOP. So I really did like Trainual. Whale was similar. It seemed to be popular with service businesses. It seemed to be a little cheaper than Trainual. Trainual did have a little bit of investment in it, but it was fantastic. Some that I haven't used, but did come up in some of my research were Notion, Confluence, Process Street, and Tetra, T-E-T-T-R-A. Have not used those personally, but again, the only reason I'm even mentioning them is to show that there are a ton out there for us to really talk about, see what your needs are, figure out what is going to be the best solution for you. Some are checklist-based. Some are better for larger teams, like Confluence is more powerful for teams that are larger, well over 20, integrates with project management tools. So all of these, there's not a one-size-fits-all. It's what your business needs is how we're going to partner to figure out what to put in place for you. The simple one, simple, Google Docs. Use a Google Doc. If you are not in a position to want to get one of these platforms, you don't want the budget to do that, you don't have time or need to set it up, you have a smaller business, maybe not a ton of SOPs, use your Google Docs or a shared drive. It's familiar. People understand it. It's not going to have some of those higher end features like the automatic reminder to update, but you can always put something in your calendar for that, right? Which we'll talk about in a moment. But it's easy to use. You have them in one place. My only, 2 bits of feedback. One is if we're not maintaining it and updating it, of course, it's going to get outdated. But second is start early on a very specific naming convention for it. Again, doesn't matter what it is necessarily, as long as you specifically name it. So, for example, you can have the company name, department name, topic, and then SOP name. However you want to structure it, make sure it's consistent. Because then when somebody is opening up that Google Doc and they're seeing all these different documents, their eyes know exactly where to go. Right? And the reason I said company is sometimes we're managing more than one company under the same umbrella. But if we're not, department, topic, or department, area of the business, whatever it might be, but make sure you use that same naming convention. A heck of a lot easier for people to find them later. Now, I did say that there's one I'm going to adamantly disagree with, and I laughed because I did actually get in a friendly disagreement, but a long disagreement with a business owner I was working with last year. And he said, okay, these SOPs are great, Daria. Thank you so much for getting them together. Now I want you to print them out and get them out to everybody. And I said, whoa. I don't think that's a great strategy. I do not think that's a great plan. And he was like, oh, why? Because of the paper. He knows how I feel about waste and, and the environment and all that. But I was like, no, well, that's part of it. Part of it is I don't like the waste of all that paper. But the other part is, depending on how many you have out, how do you update them? And then how do you make sure that they're updated? So let's give the most extreme example that we possibly can have. And that is when we had our T-Mobile stores at Express stores, and we had, let's call it 500 stores to make the numbers easy. And let's say of those 500 stores, we have something that needed to be changed right away in the SOPs. And it's effective in 3 days. And everybody has a book back at their desk of what to do. Well, that's my daily to-dos. But they have a book. So now I have this policy change. I need to get them printed. Now, do I just print out a page? Did we make sure that I can I can put just a page in? Great. So I get this page printed out, or I send it to everybody. I tell everybody to print it out. Now, we're all managers here. We've all led someone or something, right? Of those 500 people, can you guarantee me that 500 of those binders will be updated in the next 3 days? Those physical binders. I promise you they won't. There's almost no scenario where that can happen because it just doesn't. It just doesn't happen. Somebody missed it, or somebody slipped up, or somebody forgot, or somebody got busy, or there was a store manager out sick that week. Something happens, and then somebody goes back to that SOP book, and it's wrong, and that's what they're following. Where if we have it digitally, I get that change. I go, oh, okay. Go to my computer, update the change, hit save. That's it. Now, that's it from the SOP perspective. I certainly do like to use whatever communication tool that we have to send something out to say, hey, this SOP has been updated. Whether it be ClickUp, Teams, Google, whatever you use. Hey, just a heads up, this SOP was changed. That way people know to look, just in case they already knew what they knew before. And depending again on the size of the company, I may bring in our training team, communications team, depending on the scope of that change. But generally, heck of a lot easier than trying to go through 500 locations or 50 trucks or whatever it might be to try to get that SOP changed. Saves money, saves time. Okay. The last piece, again, that we're going to talk about today before we get into some takeaways is the updating. I told you before that 80% of the SOPs I've reviewed for folks were the original SOP created. And that may be the case. Maybe sometimes that SOP just never changed. It's the same exact thing we've been doing forever, which is fine, right? But a lot of companies create the SOP, store it, forget about it. 6 months later, that process has changed. The SOP didn't. Now you have something, in my opinion, even worse than no SOP, and that's a wrong SOP because people are following the steps wrong. And you know how that goes now. Customers unhappy. Boss is unhappy that stuff has to be redone. Coworkers are unhappy because you potentially have an angry client on the phone or coming into your shop. So we have to build the habit. We have to create a culture that every time a process changes, we update the document that day. Not next week, not next quarter, that day. And I'm going to rewind a little bit and say it doesn't even have to be perfect. If we don't have time, we're super swamped, super busy, log on to that SOP, excuse me, and just take out what was old, put in the new. Ugly, done is better than wrong. Get it in there. Maybe you need to revise it the next day because you're super busy, but change it in the SOP right away. That has to be a non-negotiable standard. The other is if you're using a platform that does the auto reminders, great. Make sure they're being used. If not, put it on your calendar. Have everybody who owns those SOPs do at least a quarterly review, depending on your business. How often does it change? No less than quarterly. Monthly, if your business changes a lot, but no less than quarterly. And at that point, it's not just reviewing that SOP. It's doing a true SOP review and saying, what have people been asking for a lot that we don't have? What have people been asking for that we don't have documented? Is there something new that only one person knows that isn't in there? And make sure we're doing that all the time. And what I mentioned earlier, too, is if we have an SOP that isn't changing, still audit it and still note that it was audited. People know it's fresh then, even if it hasn't been changed in 2 years. People know you looked at it. People know you checked it. Okay. That way, when you're looking at these SOPs, it's not just a compliance file. It's not just a file there that you spent a ton of time on just to sit there. It's an actual growth tool for your business. Okay, so as always, everyone, I'm going to leave you off with a few questions to take back and a few tasks to take back. Do you have SOPs right now? When were they last updated? What's the one process in your business that's never been written down? What tool do you use today to store your SOPs if you do have them? And has a wrong or outdated SOP ever caused a problem in your business? Definitely some great things to think about and discuss with your team while you're building out your SOP library. So, of course, as always, we end this by saying, I wouldn't be talking about this if it isn't something I know a lot about and can absolutely help you with. So for anything you need with operations, SOPs, feel free to reach out, LeMayFusionGroup.com, 732-508-0580. Always here to help. Next week, we are continuing on with our process and operations, and we were talking about delegation that actually works because SOPs make delegation possible. If it's in your head, like we talked about last week, and it's not written down, you can't properly delegate. All those fears are going to come true of delegating. I don't want to delegate because I'm the only one who knows it. You're right. If it's not in your head, properly documented, now we can get to that next step of delegation, which means you, as the CEO, owner, founder, senior manager, get to work more on the next steps of the business versus drowning in the day-to-day of the business. So team, go finish your drink, take a deep breath, and go lead with intention today. Thanks so much, everyone.